We'll do the final Mamer in Maamar Molokit Chelik Dala. This is the 44th Mamer. And the Rebbe, it's not the usual Mugadike Maimorim that were collected in these volumes, but towards the end, they put in some of the Maimorim that the Rebbe only looked over partially, so it's not really Muga fully, but it's still included because some of it was Muga. The Rebbe said this Maimer in Shabbos Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech, which was the 25th day of Elul, Chofei Elul, in the year Hey Tovshin Tezayin. It says in the note over here that the beginning and the end of the Maimer, which is the Pasuk of Atem Nitzavim Hayim Kulchem, the connection to Atem Nitzavim Hayim Kulchem, the end of the Maimer that explains the questions that the Rebbe asks on the Pasuk, that was Huga, that was looked over by the Rebbe. The Rebbe says this was published at the time when the Rebbe said the Maimer over there in Tavshin Tazayin as an addendum, as a hisofer to the Maimer Shoiftim v'Shoitrim in Tov Reish Lamed Gimel. So the Rebbe Maharash had a Maimer of Shoiftim v'Shoitrim in Tov Reish Lamed Gimel. At that particular time, they published it. And they published the Maimer of the Rebbe Maharash, and the Rebbe added notes, references and notes from the Rebbe. And that was published in a booklet by itself. And the date on there was Moitzoi Shabbos Kodesh, Chofei Elul, Hey Tovshin Tezayin. So basically, the Motzei Shabbos, when the Rebbe gave this Maimer, so the Rebbe looked over the beginning and the end of this Maimer, and they put this in as a hisofer to that Maimer. Later on, when they published all the Maimorim of the Rebbe Maharash, so in Sefer HaMaimorim, Tov Reish Lamed Gimel, Chelik Beis, Amud Tov Samach Aleph, and then in Amud Tov Reish Ches Test, Tov Reish Ches Test, they republished this Maimer that was published in a contrast by itself as part of all the Maimorim. And in the Pesach Dover, in the opening for that Sefer Maimorim, it says there that the Maimer that was said, Shabbos Parsha Nitzavim Vayelech Chof He'elu Shonizu, is the Maimer of Shoftim v'Shoitrim. That's the Maimer, based on the Maimer that is being printed. That's the Rebbe Marash's Maimer that the Rebbe said the Maimer with several changes. That's the Maimer of Shoftim v'Shoitrim itself, and also with an addition of the beginning and the end. This whole idea of Atem Nitzavim Hayim Kulchem, the beginning, and then that was added by the Rebbe at that Fabregen. So in the Pesach Dover, it says that over there they have the Maimer itself, the way the Rebbe said it. Besides the Haskola V'Siyum, the way the Rebbe said it, and with Marmakoimis, and they were copied from the Kuntras over there into the Sefer HaMorim. In any event, this Maimer is from the Rebbe Maharash that the Rebbe added to it, but it's only the opening part about Atem Nitzavim. The ending part, the Rebbe looked over. The rest, the Rebbe didn't look over here. But the Rebbe gave Maramekoimus for the Maimer of the Rebbe Maharash of Tov Reish Lamed Gimel, but that's separate. Let's look at the Maimer inside. Shabbos Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech Chofei Elul Hey Tovshin Tezayin Hanocha Bilti Muga. So the pasuk says like this: Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem Lifnei Havaya Lekechem Rasheichem Shivteichem Mechoyte V'Etzachat Shoiv Memecha. That we're all standing before Hashem, and everybody, Rasheichem Shivteichem, the leaders, and even from the wood choppers, the water drawers, and all standing before Hashem. Now, the Rebbe will explain later on at the end of the Mamer that what's the idea of kulchem, everybody is there. Doesn't matter which level, all levels are there. So the Rebbe begins, Hine parsha zu koidim la'olam koidim Rosh Hashanah. So this section of Atem Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah. You read the parsha Atem Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes you read Vayelech, but Atem Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah. So what's the connection between Atem Nitzavim Hayoim that we read before Rosh Hashanah? Because according to the interpretation the Alter Rebbe brings down from the Maggid and the Baal Shem Tov, the Atem Nitzavim Hayoim is actually, this was talking about before they went over in Eretz Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu brought them through a covenant again before going to Eretz Yisrael. But in a broader sense, the way the Alter Rebbe explains, is Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, it refers to Rosh Hashanah, that on Rosh Hashanah we're all standing before Hashem. And we read it before Rosh Hashanah, and it's hinted in the word Hayom. Atem Nitzavim Hayom. The Hayom we find in the Pasuk, Vahi Hayom, it's talking about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin Arab. It says, in a parsha, Zu Koidim, Loilum Koidim Rosh Hashanah, we always read before Rosh Hashanah. Umerumas b'milas Hayoim, the Koyal Rosh Hashanah, and that's hinted in the word Hayoim, which goes on Rosh Hashanah. K'may shekosuv Rabbeinu, as the Alter Rebbe writes, Shekibel Merabbi HaMagid, that he received this interpretation from his teacher, the Magid. The Rabbi and his teacher, the Magid, received it Merabbi HaBaal Shem Tov from his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. The Hayoim Koyi al Rosh Hashanah. When it says Atem Nitzavim Hayoim, you're standing today, that means on Rosh Hashanah you're standing. Why do we need to stand? What is the Pasuk telling us? Because we're talking about Hayoim Shehu Yoim Hadin. It's a day of judgment. So where does Hayoim have to do with judgment? Because the Pasuk says Vahi Hayoim, and that Pasuk is in Eiv, that Vayamdu Vayavoyu Bnei Odom Vahi Hayoim, and they stood before Hashem. So the Targum teaches that what was Vahi Hayoim, V'Targum V'Hava Yoim Odedin Rabba, that was the day of the great judgment. So that's Nitzavim Hayoim, on that day, on the day of the great judgment. The Rosh Hashanah, Hu Yoim Hadinu Mishpat. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, the day of the decision of the court case, the decision, the Mishpat, the judgment. And the Pasuk is saying to us, Atem Nitzavim Hayoim, it's a bracha. The bracha is that we are standing strong, that we will be victorious. Zu bracha, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, this is the blessing, that you're standing all today. Sha'atem Kulchem Merashechem Shiftechem Atchoyte V'etzecha B'Shovimecha. All of you, whether you are from the heads of the tribes or you are just the wood choppers and water carriers, water drawers, Nitzavim, you're standing, Nitzavim, on Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, which means Kayomim v'Oimdim, you are standing, you exist and you stand, which means, what does it mean you stand? V'hainu shezoichem b'din. That's the bracha that you merit in judgment. Atem Nitzavim, you standing strong. Hayoim, on the day of judgment, Kulchem, whether Rashechem, Shiftechem, Choyte V'Eitzacham. That's the meaning, the way the Alter Rebbe brings down from the Magid and from the Baal Shem Tov. Now the Rebbe brings in, this is already the second part from the other Mamer of the Rebbe Maharash, Shefti B'Sheitrim, that Mamer. So there the medrash on the verse you take on the first day. So he brings down the pasuk Hadohu Diksiv, and this is the pasuk, of course, in Tilim, in which we say Perik Tzadik Vav pasuk Yud Beis. We say this in the Lechuna Ranano on Friday night. So the pasuk says there, Yalois Sodai V'chol Asher Boy. What is the meaning? Yalois means should rejoice, my field and everything that's in the field. This is referencing, says the Medrash, the field is Hashem's world and everything that's in it is creation. They should be all rejoicing. And what's the reason for their rejoicing? Because the pasuk says, Kivo lishpeit haaretz, yishpeit tevel b'tzedek. So what are we rejoicing about? So the pasuk says the Medrash, Yali sodai v'chol asher boi, Yali sodai zehoilam chulu. That is my field, Eibishter's field. That's the world. What is v'chol asher boi? Elu habriyas chulu. So and then it says, Lifnei me. Who should we rejoice before? Yali asher boi. Lifnei me. Lifnei Hashem. The pasuk says there. And Lama, why? So before whom? Before Hashem. And why should we rejoice? Kivo. Lifnei Hashem, kivo lishpeit haaretz. That's what the pasuk continues there. So we're rejoicing before Hashem because He comes when? Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur. What does He come to do on Rosh Hashanah? Lishpeit haaretz. Malas is what to do. Yishpeit tevel b'tzedek v'amim b'meishorim. The Eibishter judges the world, the tevel, with justice, and people with meishorim, with straightness. The Eibishter judges. That's the pasuk brought down over there in the Medrash. So basically, it seems like because the Eibishter is coming to judge the people, and we're coming and kivo lishpeit haaretz, and he's going to yishpeit tevel b'tzedek v'amim b'meishorim. Is the end of that kapitel, that perek. That's why we're rejoicing. So the Rebbe asks, what's so to rejoice about? So even though we're saying that they're winning bedin atem nitzavim ayem kulchem, but wouldn't it be better not to be judged altogether? And the Rebbe will explain later on, actually, in the judgment, we get not judged to diminish, but to get greater things, as the Rebbe will explain at the end of the Maamar. But the Rebbe asks now, Mahu hasimcha the Yaloi Sodai v'chol asher boi mahamishpat. What is this joy that my field and everything that's in the world and all inhabitants shall rejoice, Yalois, from the Mishpat? Hailoi zehu dinu Mishpat. This is the judgment. It's a time of accounting and judgment. And even if you win, but wouldn't it be better? It would be better without a judgment at all. Even if you can win, wouldn't it be better without a mishpat? Besides that, the Rebbe says when the judgment, we know that a person should always consider himself, it says in the word, that always consider himself being like a Rasha. So the Rasha don't end up so well from this judgment. So why would everybody rejoice? So even more, it is surprising. Shari Amr Razal, our sages of blessed memory tell us, Shafilu kol oilam kula emrim l'chot tzadikato. Even if the whole world tells you you're righteous, you're a tzaddik, but in your own eyes, you consider yourself like you are like a Rasha. Now, if you're like a Rasha, you consider, then why would you rejoice? Because we know that the Amru Razal, our sages of blessed memory, said that Gimel Svarim Niftachim Rosh Hashanah. God has 3 books that He opens up that are open at Rosh Hashanah. Tzadikim, one book is for life. Tzadikim Nichtovim La'alter L'chaim. The tzadikim are put right ways. La'alter, immediately for life. They get signed up in the book of life. The Shoyim Chulu, the Rebbe doesn't want to say over there. They go in the negative, and then we have the Bein in the middle. But if he has to hold himself like a Rasha, so how could you be enjoyed when you know that you're written in the wrong book, in the book which is not for the opposite of life? In Cain, how could you be rejoicing? How could you say because of the mishpat when we tell the person he should consider himself a Rasha, and the judgment of a Rasha is not in the book of life? And then we have another interesting question that Rebbe brings over here. How could we bichlal be judged by the Eibishter if we're considered to be related to Hashem? And we know that a judge is not allowed to be a korev, not allowed to be a relative of the one who's judged. We are children of Hashem, we're called brothers and friends of Hashem. So how could Hashem even bichlal judge us? Also, we need to understand. Who has the judgment? The judgment is Elikim. But about the Yidden it says, who is like the Yidden Asher lo Elikim Krevim Elov, who Hashem is close to him. So we're saying Elikim, Hashem who judges us, is Krevim Elov. Asher lo Elikim Krevim Elov. The Elikim, the Mishpat is the Elikim, and Elikim is Krevim Elov. Kidiksiv, like it says, Bonim Atem Nitzavim, you are sons to God, your God. We're related. Uksiv, another pasuk says, Leman Achai V'Rei, because of my brothers, which is referencing the Yidden. They're called Achim V'Reim. So how could we be judged by Hashem, the Mishpat by Elikim, but the halacha is Varikorev Pasulodin. But somebody who's a relative is unfit, is disqualified, cannot judge. So how could we be judged? How could we be judged by Hashem? And then the further question: V'gam tzorich lahavi mashakosuv yishpoi tevel b'tzedek. He will judge the tevel. Why are we saying tevel? Tevel is the world. The world has different names, but we're saying we will judge the tevel, and it will be bitzedek. What is the bitzedek? The base tzedek over here. The Rebbe explains that this is not the simcha, the judgment is not the simple judgment for Averis or thing like that, but we're talking about Yishpoi Tevel. The Tevel is a high madrege, and base is bitzedek, two tzedeks. And therefore there's Yahweh's, as we will explain later on. But here the Rebbe asks, Ma'u inyan bitzedek? What is the idea that Eibishter will do it with tzedek? He will judge. Uma'u du kaloshim tevel dafke. What's the specific language that he will judge? Tevel bitzedek. Why tevel? What's special about tevel? These are all the questions that the Rebbe piles up on this pasuk in Tehillim, Yali Soda v'chol asher boi, and to rejoice with the tzedek, and why would we be rejoicing, especially, and how could the Elikim judge us? And the Rebbe is going to explain this is all on a higher level. But first, the Rebbe is going to explain what's the idea of Tevel. That Tevel, when we said Tevel, that's the highest level, that's the level of Shvi. Within the world, this name, the seventh name for the earth, is Tevel. The seventh is dear, Kol Hashvim Chavivim. Whether it's the month of the year, it's the days of the week, Shabbos, or Rosh or Tishrei, it's always the seventh is there. The seven Rakim, the highest is Chavivim. Same thing in the Oretz is the Chavivim is the table. So we're talking about table. And then we're going to talk about the B'tzedek. But the idea is the Hinei, Omru Razal, B'Medrash, our sages of blessed memory say in the Medrash, Kol Hashvin Chavivim. All that are seventh are dear. B'Yomim, in days Shvi Chaviv. The seventh is dear. Yom HaShabbos, that's the Shabbos day. Shenemar, how is the Shabbos day expressed its dearness? It says, "Vayvorech Elikim es Yom HaShvi v'Hakadosh." So God blessed Shabbos, and God sanctified Shabbos. What exactly is the blessing, and what is the kedusha? So the Rebbe brings down in the parentheses, "Ba'amru Razal," and the Razal say that Borchoi Bamon, he blessed with the mon. There was a double portion, so that Friday you got for Shabbos as well. V'Kitche Bamon, and he sanctified it with the mon that on Shabbos it didn't fall. That's one in meaning of Ekadosh. There's another saying of our sages, V'chein Amru Razal. Also, our sages, blessed memory, say in the Bereshis Rabbah, what is the Kacheyu? A person's face shines differently on Shabbos than it does. That's the Kedusha of Shabbos, is on the face. Kachei b'moir ponav shalodom. The Eibishter sanctified Shabbos with the glow, the shine of the face of the person. It's not the same, the shine of the face of a person during the weekday, the moir ponav shalodom b'Shabbos, to the shine of the face when it comes to Shabbos. So that's the seventh in the days of the week by Verchei V'Kadosh, so it's there. And then we have B'Chadoshim, when we talk about the month, Shvi Chaviv, the seventh month is there, which is Chodesh HaShvi, the seventh month, Tishrei, Shu Musba Bakoil, it is satisfied with everything. It's satisfied with everything, meaning physically, everything meaning physically and spiritually. Physically, the seventh month has been blessed both physically and spiritually. Mamer Atem, like our sages tell us. So what's the physical part? It says, Gitois b'soichoi, brochos b'toichoi. The wine is in it. The wine is the grapes that were picked and they produce the wine are in the seventh month. The blessings are in it. What are the blessings? Shu Eis Ha'osif. It's a time of ingathering, all the gathering of all the crops that grew in the summer are all brought into the house. Chag Ha'osif. Eis Ha'osif, this time of bringing in Sukkos. So it's all, this is the Chodesh HaShvi. Gashmi is the wine, the blessings, the all the fruits are brought in. And likewise, also in the spiritual, sheyesh bo mitzvahs harbe. It has a lot of mitzvahs. Spiritually, the seventh month has been blessed with a lot of mitzvahs. Shofar, then you have Rosh Hashanah, mitzvah Shofar, and then Rosh Hashanah, the day of Rosh Hashanah, B'Yom Kippurim, and then you have the Sukkah, and then you have the Daled Minim, and the four species, Ushmini Atzeres, V'Lachein, and because we see that the seventh is there, so when we talk about the earth, and we talk about the seventh level of the earth, Gam ba'oretz shvi is chavivim. Also the seventh is there, it's special. What's the seventh? What's the seventh? So in the heavens, we have seven skies. And equivalent, we have seven level of the eretz, and the seventh, which is Tevel, is the deer. Just as there is seven firmaments, Shamayim, one, Ushmeya Shamayim, two, Rakiya, three, Shchokim, four, Zvul, five, Umoin, six, Marovis. So how do we see that Arovis, the Shvi, that's the seventh, but it's there. Uksiv, Soilu laroiche ba'arovis. Soilu make way, the one who rides on the Aravis. That's the highest, the seventh. The Yutke Shmoi. His name is Yutke. Hainu. That means the Eibishter rides in the seventh, meaning that that's the dear one. Sha'aravis who Hashviyu Achoviv. That's the seventh, that's the dear one. And the reason why it is Lifi Shaboy Nimtsoy Nishmeisayim Shel Tzadikim Chulu. Over there, the souls are tzadikim are found. They are in Aravis. That's why it's there by Hashem, so that he should ride over them, over the Yidden, the Roichev Baravis, and that's the dearness. So we see the seventh, the Eibishter is there. That's a Chavivus for the seventh sky. The same thing is also on the earth. Likewise, it's also on the earth. The earth has 7 names. So you have Eretz 1, Adoma 2, Arka 3, Gay 4, Tzia 5, Nishia 6, and Tevel is 7. Tevel is 7. In a Tevel Shu Ashvi, Hu Achoviv Tevel, which is the 7th, is the dear one. Valze Nemar, and about this we're talking about. Yishpoi Tevel B'tzedek, not all of the world, but Tevel, the Eibishter judges B'tzedek, with Tzedek, Tevel Davke. So the judgment of Tevel, of that level of the earth, that is B'tzedek. So now we have to take this apart. So what is the world of Tevel, which Hashem judges B'tzedek? Gimel. In order to understand this, we have to first introduce what is this judgment. Shahu that is for the general service that we served Hashem in the past year. How do we serve Hashem? By observing Torah mitzvahs. So there's a judgment how we did the Torah mitzvahs. Now, we're not just judging whether you did Torah mitzvahs, but the judgment is how you did Torah mitzvahs. Because you can do Torah mitzvahs just externally, just doing it, but you can do it with Mesiras Nefesh in a way that you get to be mamshich ponecha. The pasuk says, "Ani b'tzedek erze ponecha." This word b'tzedek, with righteousness, is everything. The Torah, Avodah, Gemilos Chasodim, the Rebbe will explain, it's all included in b'tzedek. Torah, Avodah, all b'tzedek. Ani b'tzedek erze ponecha. So the tzedakah, when we do it in a powerful way, in a way of b'tzedek, then we get to see ponecha. That's the judgment, is whether we've reached the level of Mesiras Nefesh beyond. Let's look inside. So who al klolus ha'avoida b'shana shavra v'kimat Torah mitzvahs b'chol gimul hakavim, in all the 3 lines, the 3 areas, the Torah, avoida, gemilos chasodim. Of Torah, study of Torah. Avoida, that's davening. Tefillah is avoida shebeleizu tefillah or korbanos, but Bisman hazeh, it's tefillah. Gemilos chasodim, that's mitzvahs, doing acts of kindness. Shehem gimel advarim shaleim ha'olam ha'omed. This is the 3 items, the 3 things that the world stands on. Sheklolusam hu inyan shel tzedakah. Generally, it's all tzedakah. It's all charity. Tzedakah, what we do, the Torah and the mitzvahs, avodah, tzedakah. Never's going to explain now. How so? The hine gam ha-Torah hu inyan shel tzedakah. Torah is basically a gift of charity that the Eibishter gave us. It's a tzedakah. Why? Because Torah in essence is higher than the world. And for us to get the Torah is a tzedakah that the Eibishter gave tzedakah to us. Shara Torah mitzad atz ginegam ha-Torah in shel tzedakah. Shara Torah mitzad atzmo hi bein arechel. Torah on its own is uncomparable. To come down to this world. And that to draw down into the world, Torah is tzedakah. So, how do we get Torah into this world? When a Yid learns Torah in a proper way, so he gets that tzedakah, he gets the Torah. And who that connection, that Torah which is Bein Aroich, should come down the world, Poil in Neshamas Yisrael al Yidei Avedasa. Through their, when they work, they bring Torah down into this world through their study of Torah. How could Yidden bring down the Torah, which is Ein Arech, to the world? Because Yidden are even higher than Torah, and Yidden push, so to speak, through their Avodah. When they tap into their source, they bring down that the Torah should come into the world. They impacted through their service. Because this thought of Yidden, the Eibishter's machshava for Yidden comes before the Eibishter's machshava for Torah. Yidden are higher than Torah. Kodma afilu machshavta shel Torah. And therefore, the Yidden have the ability to be mamshich Torah into the world. But this is a level of tzedakah. That explains why Torah is considered tzedakah. Now we're going to explain what is the tzedakah of tefillah. Okay, avodah, same thing avodah, which is shuin and avodah sakarbonis, which is either the service of karbonis or bisman hazeu in tefillah. Today is davening. How is a kosherim tzedakah? So we see that prayer is connected to tzedakah. We know that it's only through that before Ani, the Gemara brings down, Mamer Azal, as their sages tell us, first he gave a coin, a pruta, to a poor person, then he would daven. First to give Shenemar, and the Gemara said the reason, Ani betzedek echze ponecha. So that means I, with tzedakah, with the idea of tzedakah, then I will see ponecha. When do we get down the tefillah that we're davening to be able to connect erze ponecha? That is when we do tzedakah. The tzedakah is the key to bringing down or to connecting to ponecha. V'hainu shalidei ha-tzedakah nase b'tefillah ha'inyan de'erze ponecha. That through tzedakah that you give, that makes up by the davening that you should be able to see Panecha. And we say Panecha Daike, not to see Hashem, to see Panecha, the Pnimius. B'chinas Pnimius Elokus Shemizgalis al de Pnimius HaNeshama. The inner of Elokus is revealed to the Pnimius HaNeshama. So, through giving tzedakah, you tap in not just to godliness, but to the pnimius of godliness, which comes through the pnimius of neshama. So the fact that you can daven to the Eibishter with your pnimius, you bring down the pnimius of the Ein Sof. And Velochein HaTefillah, that's why the davening is higher than his shtalshulus. It's his higher, and that's what we say it's al havaya, it's beyond havaya. Lochein HaTefillah, he al havaya, that's higher than havaya. It's ponecho, the pnimius. As the Pasuk says, Bar Chana, Vatispal Chana, al havaya, over of a higher than havaya. L'mayla m'shem havaya. Because Shem Havaya is godliness, but this is Alavai the Pnimius. Oh, so Bezel Mashekosuf, and this is what the Pasuk says, that Yishbe Tevel, the Eberster will judge this Tevel, this highest level of the world that we're saying. He will judge it bit tzedek, which is the base tzedek, the two tzedek. The two tzedek is divided in two categories. The tzedek of gevul, avodah gevul, that's one tzedek, and then the second tzedek is avodah bligvul, the higher level, to get the level of es ponecho. So these are the base tzedek. Shem base b'chinas tzedek, b'chinas hat tzedek shebigmilus chasodim utfila. On one hand, you have the tzedek, which is through the mitzvahs and davening, shehu inyan hatzdaka shebehagbola. That's the tzedakah that you bring down. You don't get the ponecho, but you get down the tzedakah, which is limited, because Torah mitzvahs has the limit of the mitzvahs of gemilas chasodim and tefillah. It doesn't have to be on a higher level beyond. But when you have the level tzedek shebetoiro, sheuinyan hatzdaka b'li hagbola, that is the level of tzedakah without any limitation. So the two levels of tzedakah is b'hagbola, which is through gemilas chasodim and tefillah, and the level that comes through Torah is the level of tzedakah without any limitation, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. So the Rebbe explained we have tzedek in each one of these cases, sai in the Torah, and sai in tefillah, and sai in avodah. It's all tzedek, but the tzedek that is from the Gemilus Chasodim and Avodah is a tzedek behagbola, a limited. And the second level of tzedek that comes from Torah, that's bli hagbola, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. Dalet. To understand more in detail, Mailas HaTzedakah, the advantage of tzedakah, Shalzen Nemar, Rab Eliezer Yoi Prutuloni Voder Matzli, the advantage of tzedakah, which it's said about Rabbi Eliezer that he would give first a coin and then daven. Shenemar, and he said because before you see Hashem davening, you have to do the tzedek. The Rebbe explains, the idea of tzedakah is to vitalize the spirit of those who are downridden. That's a poor person that has nothing, and you are vitalizing him. And the Rebbe says there's two parts to it. Tzedakah vitalizes him physically, elevates him, and Hashem responds. If you do it for the poor person, Hashem gives hamshacha into this world more. And then there's also lifting the spirit of the poor, which brings us to a deeper level of receiving from Hashem. Which is the poor person has nothing. When you give him tzedakah, you vitalize it. And that way, you also bring up, you arouse above, also the idea to vitalize the spirit of the shvol. Sheheim gimel olam is biyah. What is the lower level that we're vitalizing? The ruach shefolim that Hashem vitalizes is the three worlds of Bri Yitzira Asiya. They are called shenikroim shfolim. They're called lower. Hashem, because they're called lower because of Shemokir Savusam Urak B'Bchinas HaMalchus Sheb'Bchinas HaOra Bilvat, because their source of creation is only from Malchus. Malchus is only a ray alone, and therefore Biyah, Bri Yitzira Asira are considered Shvol. Why is this called Haora? K'mesha Kosuv, like we say, Kinizgov Shmoi Levadoi. The Shmoi is exalted, is raised by himself. Verak, only Hoidoi, only his ray. Malchus, which is the ray, Ziva Ora Bilvad. Hoida, which is just a ray and a shine alone, and Eretz V'Shamayim. What comes down into Eretz V'Shamayim, into Biyah, which is Eretz V'Shamayim? Only a Ziv, only Malchus. That's why we need to vitalize the spirit of downridden, Hainu, the spirit of those shfolim, those who downridden, and also in Bri Yitzira Asiya, they should feel the light of Atzilus. V'zeu inyan ha'tzdaka l'maylo, shenifal al yidei ha'tzdaka l'mato. And this is the tzedakah above that is accomplished to the tzedakah below. When we do tzedakah below, as we said before, you give a poor person, and then you daven ba'al yidei zeh nimshach kach b'tfilo gilur oir shelamaylo mihishtalshelus. And then you bring down a ray of light which is higher than Hishtalshelus, which comes down to Biyah. So in Biyah, in our world, we only have a ray. How do we get the higher level of Shmoi, which is Levadoi? How do we get it down to this world? Through our tzedakah. We're V'chaya Ruach Shfolim, we get from the Gilu Oir Shelamayla Mishtalshlus. Shehu Inyan Haoris Ein Insof Mebchinas Ponim. Echze Ponecha, that's a Nibet Tzedek Echze Ponecha, through our Hamshah, our giving tzedakah, we get Lachis Ruach Shfolim to get from higher level into Biyah. So we want Atzilus should be felt in Biyah, and that is through tzedakah. Ani b'tzedek echze ponecha. The ponecha here is the Elmes Atzilus. But within tzedakah, there is two avodas. There is the physical tzedakah, lahachyes, to give them vitality, and then it's to make them feel good, the mefaisa. Within the level of tzedakah itself, there is two types of avodah. The Omru Chazal, our sages of blessed memory, say, Hanoisem pruta la'oni mizborech b'shisha brachos, v'hamefaise mizborech b'yudala brachos. If you give him just the money, the pruta, to the honor, you get 6 blessings. 6 represents the 6 spheres, which is you get Atzilus to come down to Biyad, which is the tzedakah Echze Ponecha. But Mefaisa, you get 11 brachas, which represents the level of Keser, which is higher. That's the Blik Vul that you get even higher. That's through the higher level of tzedakah, the second level on Mefaisa. So the sages tells Hanoisim Prutalani Mizborach B'Shisha Brachas, gets blessed with 6 blessings. Vamefaisim Mizborach B'Yudal Brachas, and the one who appeases him gets 11 brachas. So what's the idea? Shenisinas Prutalani. Giving the pruta for the ani, that's for his body. Since through this you are just vitalizing his body. So what does it impact with its tzedakah above? It is only to be mamshich, the light of Atzilus and Biyah. It's still called Echze Ponecha. It's not Ha'ore, but it's only the level of Atzilus to Biyah. Ukemerum is gam beloshin pruta, noisim pruta. The word pruta is shu prat vovke. That is the detail of vovke. So basically, to be mamshich, the vov into the k. The vov, the hey is malchus. Vov is the 6 spheres. Shu prat vovke, the hainu lahamshichu lahafrit, to draw down and to detail bechinas havov, the level of vov, the 6 spheres el hay, ukemevu into the hay, into 6 spheres into malchus. Vur besidur bedibra maschil ad nais vosai tiftoch. Over there it says, Hashem, open my lips. So over there he explains v'inyan koil v'dibur. You have the sound. The sound, all words use sound, but the dibur separates and distinguishes the different sounds, the different level, the different words that come out from the sound. So the sound is the general, and the words are the specifics. It's a klal, and the words are the prat. Shakoilu b'chinas klal, that's the generality. Everything comes from, there's a sound. V'adiburu b'chinas prat, shemefaret mashe b'chlal. That's details that which is in the klal. In the voice, everything is included, no specifics. The speech, the words, later on take that voice and make it into the details. The voice is the general on all letters. But the letters, those are the details. We say pruta, porat vovke, lahafrit, b'chinas havov ela hey, to detail and get the vav into the hey, to get the specific 6 of the vav into the hey, into malchus. Lochem is vorach b'vav brachas. That's why there is 6 brachas. Keneged ois vav the shem havaya, which correspond to the level of ois vav k. No, that's giving the pruta. Pius only when you appease the poor person. It's not a matter that he just needs for his body. That relaxes the mind. And that is, why is the ani need to be relaxed? Because the ani is bitter on his condition. And while he understands there needs to be a poor and a royalty, but he's bitter. Why is he the poor person? The oni on his own is bitter. He has arguments. He's not happy. And he complains. The fact that he's poor. Like the Pasuk says, Tefillah la'oni kiyatif. It's not any prayer over there. The prayer is kiyatif, when he wraps around and prays. is tefillah l'oni. He's praying, why am I poor? That's the prayer. Shetfilosi al etzem hayoyse oni. His prayer is just for being poor. The ime yois, while he realizes that there needs to be ime yois seder abriyu ba'ofen shetzorich liyas achilik d'oshivani. It's in a way that there needs to be a distinction between the wealthy and the poor. But yet the argument is, why does he need to be the poor person? So what happens is, and when you speak to the heart of the poor person, and you comfort him and you relax his mind until he becomes appeased, this is a greater matter than just giving a coin, a pruta, just for his body alone. So what is accomplished through this? Through this we impact not only bringing Atzilus, the Vovki, the Pruta, into Biyah, to Malchus, to Biyah, to decay, Elokus, but also bringing down the inner of godliness, the level which is higher than Ishtalshus. That's why the one who appeases him gets 11 brachas. Has known that the number 11 points to a level which is higher than 10 spheres, which is higher than Ishtalshus. This is similar to what we say before Lifnei Havaye, Vaitispalel al Havaye, Lifnei Havaye, Lemaile Havaye, before Havaye. Vezeu Gam Shepius Oisius Yosef, that the word pius, appeasing, is the same letter as Yosef. Because this pius brings down the level of Yaakov to Yosef, who mashbir bor to into this world from the higher level. The Hine Yosef Ksiv, Eila told us Yaakov Yosef. This is the descent of Yaakov Yosef. Yosef takes Yaakov's level and it brings it down. That's the toldus of Yaakov is Yosef. V'hainu shenyona shel Yaakov hu ba'atzilus. Yaakov is in the world of Atzilus. Aval hatachlis is Yosef who sheyumshach gam b'biyah. The ultimate goal is to come down to biyah. V'zeu nyona shel Yosef. This is Yosef's idea. Shu amashbir bor l'chol haaretz, to give the food to the whole land. Yosef feeds biyah. He's in the world. Shu inyan hamshach lamata. That's to draw it down below. Okadei she to yumshach lamata, in order for it to go down below, it needs to come from a very high place. First, you have to give the pruta to the poor person, which is the beginning. That's the level of mamshech devov to decay. And then you daven. Then you come to the higher level of erze ponecha, hamshachas pnimis k'moi al yidei inyan apius. That you get the higher level, the hamshacha pnimis, the ponecha, just like the inyan of the pius. That's the second step, specific through the level of pius. So now the Rebbe is going to explain why we need both. You need both noisim pruta. You need the both. You can't just give from the higher level, just be mefaisei. You have to give him the pruta, and you need to be the mefaisei. These two ways in the service of tzedakah Hanois brutal oni, to give both level of tzedakah. Tzrichim liyos koidem atfilo, they both need to take place before the daven. What is the idea? The hine b'negei letfilo amru razal tfilo is always tiknun. The davenings were instituted by the forefathers, so that means that the level of davening has a connection to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But also, Amr Razal, our sages tell us, Gimel Haragolim, that the three Yom Tovim Hem Keneged Gimel Avis, that also correspond to the Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Pesach Keneged Avraham, Pesach corresponds to Avraham, Shavuos Keneged Yitzchak, and the Sukkot Keneged Yaakov. So it turns out davenings, which corresponds to the three Avos, Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, correspond to Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and they correspond to the Avos. Sholish pa'omim bashona yero kol zchurchas pnei havaya lekecha b'mokim avsher yivchar. That 3 times during the year, the Sholish Regolim, that will tell us about the davening. That 3 times during the year, you should be seen as pnei havaya lekecha, the place that he chooses in the Beis Hamikdash. Hainu. How do we be seen? Because when you come to the Beis Hamikdash was directly under the Elokus from above, and you come there, Hashem sees you, so to speak. That was directly directed under, opposite the Elokus, the rooms. So there, in the Beis Hamikdash, there was the revelation of the Pnei Havaya Lekecha that came down into the Beis Hamikdash, and that's why we had to come to the Beis Hamikdash. Ukmekein b'tfilo shesidra niska neged ha'echolos. Also, in davening, the order of davening has been organized, set up, corresponding to the echolos. Yeshbo hagilui defnei Hashem Elokecha. Also in the davening there is the revelation of Pnei Havaya Elokecha, just like it's in the holidays, just like it's in the Yom Tov. Oh, so now hagilui the Pnei Havaya Elokecha beBeis Hamikdash. How did the revelation of Pnei Havaya Elokecha take place in the Beis Hamikdash? Hoyanasa al yedei inyan ha'ishtachavo. That was through prostrating yourself that brought about the Pnei Hashem Elokecha. K'moshe Kosuf, as the pasuk says, lirois sholosh pam b'shana lirois ve'eno nicholim lirois u'lishtachves. You need to be seen and to prostrate. So that means that the way you get to the re'i of Elokus is through ishtachavo, through the level of bittul. How we prostrate, there's 2 levels. There's an external prostrating. You do it because you're told it's like a slave. You just prostrate, you're bittul. Ishtachavo is bittul, but a bittul which is basically forced upon you. It doesn't come from your inside. However, similar to the prostrating of a servant to his master. It's in a way forcing yourself, you must. Because it's possible, he may not want it at all. But you prostrate yourself because of the fear of the master. So how do you get, there's 2 that's the prostration on a very external level. In a way of accepting the yoke. Then you have ishtachavo pnimis. You have an inner prostrating. Shehu shebevchinas chayfetz verotzen. It's not forced. It's a desire and a will. and in a way that both all of your powers are subjugated. That's the higher level in Ishtachavo. These two levels of Ishtachavo can also be compared in Maderech. Beis Abchinas the Shmiya Uriya is whether you hear godliness or you see godliness. When you're just hearing, that only impacts an external ishtachavo. But when the avodah is in the way of seeing, when you see godliness, then it's with an inner, you prostrate, that's what you want to do inside. So this is the way it's by shoulders golim, shtachavois, the two levels of shtachavo. And now we're saying that these three levels of the Yom Tevim correspond to the davening. We also have the similar. And that's why we're going to need a process of a both level of giving a pruta and mefaisei, because there's a process. When it comes to the davening, you have to do the ishtachavo chitzonis before you can get the ishtachavo pnimis. The davening is a ladder, musav arzo. The natfilo he mutsul mutsav arzo goimer. It's a ladder which is standing on the ground, going up. Hainu shahaschol asatfilo he ba'ifun. The beginning you start, you're following Hashem. You're not into it. It's behind Hashem that you follow. Achrei Havaya means behind Havaya. Hainu lamatam Havaya, lower than Havaya. Ubebechinas acharayim b'chitzonis bilvad is just external, and behind is like the hashtachavov, the eved subjugation that is forced that you need to do it. That's the avodah in a way. You accept the yoke. That's sulam mutzav arza. That's where you start your avodah. But what's the complete and the ultimate goal of the avodah? To get to the primis, the ishtachavo primis, bechinas primis, lifnei havaya, to go before Hashem, but ispalal al Hashem lifnei havaya, daim l'maylam havaya, to come to higher havaya. So this is a process. Beis in yonim elu, beis yon nasa b'tfilah. These two aspects of tefillah, sheklalusam kabbalas oil v'hasoga. Generally, it's accepting the yoke and also understanding. So first, just doing it because we have to, and then grasping it. Boim alidei beiza fane avoda b'yin tzedakah. You come to them through the two levels of avoda and tzedakah. Hanesim pruta la'oni, which is the level of bittul, and we said before that gets you the level of atzilus. V'amafaisa gets you that higher level of understanding, and bittul, the level of pnimis, the echza ponecha, the level of pnimis. So now the Rebbe circles back that we explained that there needs to be the two avodas, and there is the level of the beis tzedek, and there is the level of ponecho, and that you have to have both the sulamutz of arza, and you need the agdoma of tzedakah. So now we understand mashakosu b'zayuva mashakosu yishpoi tevel b'tzedek, that the Eibishter will judge tevel with his base tzedek, which means, as the Rebbe will explain, not just judge to take away or in a negative way, but to judge, to give through tzedek, the two bittles, the bittul of the tzedek from Anoisim Pruta and the bittul of Mefaisei, the level of a gvul hamshacha, or in a level of higher Yud Aleph, the Mefaisei. In Lekutei Torah is explained Shet Tevel who based Pomimari. The Tevel Gematria, the value, numerical value is 432, and Aryeh is 216. 2 times 216 is 432. So, what is the hint by that? The level of love, Ave, Hashem, is expressed by an Aryeh, a lion. That's the level of love. V'hainu sha'oifen ha'avoida the Aryeh, shehu inyan avodas Ave. The in the style of service of Aryeh, which is the service of Ava, which is really Ava is Klolus HaAvodah. Serving Hashem is love. That's the general Avodah. Mamer, like the saying says that there's no service as the service of love. The level of love. That's the idea is love. So Aryeh, which is the level of love, there is 2 times Aryeh. Yesh beis bechinas. There's 2 levels of Aryeh. Corresponding to what we're talking about now, there's one a level of bittul that you don't understand, and there's one a level of bittul in which it becomes like the level of Riyah and Shmiyah. Generally, it's the difference between the angels, which are called Seraphim, and the Efanim. Seraphim, Aimrim Kodesh. The Seraphim say Kodesh. Why did they say in Kodesh? Because Shemasigin Eichshu is Borach Kodesh Umuvdol, Megeder Oilomais, because they have a grasp that the Eberster is distinguished, holy, separated, Umuvdol from the world. V'lochein that's why, from their understanding and their grasp, they wish to be included and to subjugate it to Hashem blessed. That comes for the reason of their grasp in and the understanding and the taste and the appreciation, understanding the greatness of Ein Baruch Hu, so they want to be included. They understand the Kodesh. Avol, they fanim, he said, Vaifanim v'chayis HaKodesh b'rash godel. Vaifanim v'heim b'rash godel, machmas heder hasoga. They are with a great noise because of a lack of understanding. So you have the 2 levels of Srafim. They want to be included because of their understanding. Then you have the Eifanim, which don't understand. There's a lot of noise because they can't get it. It's not the bittul. Likewise, we have these 2 levels in the Shamas Yisrael. Yes, there are those that understand the greatness of the blessed Creator. They want to be included because of their grasp. That's the avodah which is seeing. But you have the ordinary people, the general people, the lay people, they don't understand. Still they want to be included, even though they don't understand. That's like the Efanim. Shazuhi Shevizehi. No, there's some. Either it has to be Shazuhi. Shazuhi avoida shebepchina shmiya kabbalah. That's avoida of listening kabbalah. Kikol echad echad miYisrael. Everybody can come Ari. Everybody can love Hashem. That's why it said Yishpet Tevel. In the word Tevel, it's hinted the two levels of Neshamas Yisrael. Tevel is two times Aryeh, two times love, both kinds of love. The love from not understanding and just bittul, Kabbalah soil, or the love that comes from understanding. V'zo gam mashenema yishpet tevel b'tzedek. He will judge the tevel b'tzedek beis tzedek. Shem beis abchinas the tzedek. There are two levels of tzedek. Tzedek, the tzedakah utfilo. The tzedek of tzedakah utfilo, which is the level of gvul. The tzedek, the Torah kinal, and the tzedek of Torah, which is the higher level and also the level of simple understanding, of not understanding just Kabbalah Sel. Omnom inyan hamishpot. What is the idea of this mishpot that we're saying yishpot tevel betzedek? What is the mishpot doing? The mishpot is not trying to see if you deserve. It's not just judgment. The mishpat is to see if you can get the extra. Inyan ha-mishpat. Yishpat tevel b'tzedek einoi inyan shel din bilvad. It is not only the idea of judgment. Adin ela kavona hi shal yideze yumshach gilu ernal b'yesod. The intent here is to draw down a greater revelation of light. The idea is shaklolus inyan hadin l'maylu. Generally, when we talk about the judgment above, so that through the judgment you'll have a greater revelation of light. As we find the same idea by Rosh Hashanah Sukkos. So Rosh Hashanah Sukkah also shemuromozim b'tevas Aryeh, which are also hinted in the word Aryeh. And Shezau inyan tevel based upon Aryeh, because that's the idea of tevel, two times Aryeh. So we're telling Yishpoit tevel, but you have the Aryeh, which is a Rosh Tevis, Kiddush Aryeh Rosh Tevis Elul, the Aleph, Rosh Hashanah, the Reish, and Yud is Yom Kippurim, and the Rabbah is the Hey. So that also, over there we say, Shal Zen Emar, Smoiloi Tachas L'Reish, V'Yivin Techapkeni. The smoil, which is under my head, is to bring about the hug of the right hand. Hainu Shebchinas, Smoilo Shuadin, the Rosh Hashanah, that the level of smoil, which is the judgment of Rosh Hashanah, is in order to be the revelation of the right hand hugging on Sukkot. So the judgment is for the Gilui Oyer. And the Rebbe says more than that. Not only that the idea of the judgment is so that through this there will be a greater level of oir. To begin with, it's not really judgment. But this is similar to what the Zohar explains, ala posik, shomayim loizaku beinov. So normally the posik would say, even the shomayim, the highest level, still in the eyes of Hashem, loizaku, they're not pure, which means they're not clear. They're not havas zuchus. Everything is guilty. That's the Pashtim Shah. But the Zohar says L'mal Yuseh, that this idea L'mal Yuseh is for the advantageous. Because something which is so special Leizaku be'enov is not clear in his eyes because always looking to make it nicer and more beautiful and more. It's leizaku because of that special attention that you have for it. Commercial ha'adam, sheyesh l'klino binyano, a person who has a nice vessel or a nice structure. Shakol masha keli chaviv of yoser. The more the vessel is dear to him, misakna yoser, he fixes it more. The doimerloin, he always thinks adaylin is nakna shaloi nitakna heta v'tzricha tikna. He still thinks that it's not been fully fixed and it still needs correction. So the level of judgment is not because just to give you a higher light. It's a level of judgment. You're being judged because you never, you love you so much, so we're trying to perfect it even more. So it's b'chlal not the level of judgment, just like the Shemayim Lezaku. It's even in a higher level, not just to make it a greater Giluyer. V'zo gamkin mashenemar v'hu yishpoi tevel b'tzedek. The Pasuk says, v'hu. What is who? Yishpoi tevel v'hu daiken. That there's 5 who, where it says in the Pasuk Toiva, Islon Chad who Tovim in Kulam, but there's one who which is better than all. We say Hu Hashem Elokeinu. He is God our God. Shemidas Rachamov La'olam. His measure of Rachamim are for the world. That's the level of who that we're talking about over here. The who is Yishpei Tevel B'Tzedek, the one whose measure of Rachamim is for the world. He is the one Yishpei Tevel B'Tzedek.